Good evening, everybody. It is 6:33, starting the Energy Committee meeting for May 22nd, 2024. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 members here. So we have a quorum, plus we have visitors here and afar. Grab a seat and
Thank you.
pull on up.
Okay, I'll roll over.
Do we have the house? Melanie and Darian from CCRPC. Chapin is there. And
Eric, so we've
Eric
got,
online.
we've got 6.
Wow. Eric is there. Oh, good. There you are, Eric. I can see your name. And Marcy and Brian. Yes, my brain is not working. So.
Very good.
All right, so. It is a time for public comment for things which are not on the agenda. So if anybody is here to speak of anything that we aren't going to address dealing with either agenda items, which is primarily. The energy plan, heat standard petition, window dressers. And anything else, does anybody else have anything to address? Hearing nothing, we'll move on. Approval of the draft minutes of May 8th.
The link was to April 24th.
No, I know that.
Just gonna follow.
Sorry, I fixed
Yeah.
it.
The link may say it, but the minutes actually say May 8th. something.
But down, oh yeah, okay,
Yeah.
sorry. down-
So, yeah. Where Matt was that was when Matt was doing the
Yeah.
moderator, right? Yes. So, this is done like we did the last time, which was actually take our energy plan updates verbatim of what we did for, agreed to, and put them in here in terms of the minutes, which there was a lot of work that went on. I saw one line which didn't quite understand, but it may have been, if you could roll back towards the top a little bit. Next page down, yeah. Oop, let me see if I can find it. It's under agricultural local objective. Yeah, right there. Right above it. No, I'm sorry. Right there, periodically review town policies on waste and recycling to make sure they are what?
Oh, yeah.
And it may have been that the rest of the sentence is in the plan already, but I saw that we have sort of they are something.
Yeah, and I think that, there was some uncertainty about the language, so I may have just that's what I wrote when I was writing the minutes, and I may have just forgotten to finish the sentence, but, I guess I think what I ended up putting in the draft plan is, periodically review town policies on waste and recycling to make sure they are consistent with, the town's goals or the town's energy goals or something like that. I don't know, but.
We may have to review this
Yeah,
as we review the actual plan, but I did notice that. Yes.
And while we're here, is there anywhere definition or even generally of regenerative? I mean,
we had a big discussion about that the last time about regenerative, or you guys did. I
Yes,
wasn't
we did,
there, but I
yes.
listened. And, it sounds like there was, some, just uncertainty about using regenerative design principles, but regenerative principles,
right, that's where we ended up, but I
Yeah.
I don't know what the term exactly means. Is it just cover crops or what does it really mean? What, you know, so I think needs some kind of definition somewhere. We're gonna use a term like
Yeah,
that.
so the end of the plan currently has a glossary,
Yep,
which we can expand upon. And because there are lots of terms that the general public probably isn't familiar with, let alone ourselves maybe. And so we can certainly, as we get towards the end of the plan, we should go through that glossary would be, and then add as many things as we want in terms of definitions, yeah.
Carbon-free fuel sources.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, we should go through the whole doc and
Yeah.
pull out those words.
Because that glossary was created in
Can I ask a question?
2018, yes.
Under recycling, there was a
It's-
task that
it's not.
the town was supposed to, administration was supposed to appoint a person in charge of recycling.
Yes,
You know if that has been done?
I think we changed that.
we
didn't
changed that,
Mhm.
What's happening
Yeah.
with that?
yes. So
Oh, yeah.
Designate a
It was this one.
municipal employee.
It was this
that
one.
Middle paragraph there.
yeah. Right, so develop a consistent townwide policy regarding reducing, reusing, composting and recycling of equipment and materials. Periodically assess the existing practices to make sure they are conforming. So instead of designating an individual, Matt Belanger had a lot of input to this because of what is actually being done in the town by town employees now, not to throw things away unnecessarily, that a lot of things get reused, shuffled from one department to another, so that there is a much reuse as possible. And so we had a consensus that we wouldn't appoint a person, but have the paragraph as it stood there.
Yeah,
No, who's in charge of that? I mean, administration?
No, he said-
administration?
there's enough policies or practices at the town office already that they didn't really, everybody's already kind of doing their thing individually. It didn't really make sense to appoint somebody, but that was kind of his take, is that?
Right.
But is there a policy that some is being developed or anything? Is there a goal? Is
It
there?
says this in the plan that a policy will be developed.
Right, well, my question is, who will develop the policy? Commission, administration?
We have to, when we do all these edits, we also have to go through who is responsible
Right.
Yeah,
for
we
them,
do that.
and so we will do that.
So that's gonna be after,
Well, we have to get through the language, then we have to
Mhm.
decide, oh, is this an energy committee thing? Is this a departmental thing? Is this a select board item? And so on.
Yeah.
And so that is, you take each of the items and go through and say, hey, is it consistent with what we had before? The current plan, or
okay,
do we do something different?
gotcha.
Other business, we've talked about a lot of things. Window dressers, living green article, which will actually come up tomorrow. Maria wrote a tremendous
That
article.
was really good.
The Rotary, which will come up sometime this summer. We'll be inviting Scott Riley to come in and talk about solar installations at Finney Crossing Apartments. Kevin brought up the piece with, from the petition, that's, clean heat standard, which we will discuss tonight. And Matt mentioned the Vermont Bike Ped Conference in June.
Can the town pay for registration?
Mhm.
Probably tomorrow.
Yes. Okay, do I hear, we've had to discuss, I think the only thing that we agreed to possibly change was that waste and recycling sentence. Can I have a motion to accept the minutes?
I'll make that motion to accept the minutes.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Committee members, all in favor of accepting the minutes, say aye. Aye. Eric's waved his hand. So we have a consensus there approved. Thank you. All right. Next on the agenda, we have done a tremendous amount of work we're out to energy plan, renewable energy generation siting, which is where the folks at CCRPC come in to help us. And there's quite an extensive area. Melinda, how do we want to address this? Melanie, are you speaking to this?
I can give you an overview on how the citing criteria works. And Darren will join me as well to kick it all off so that everybody is grounded in the same facts. Does that sound good?
Yes, please.
Okay. So as you guys know, the renewable energy generation siting policies that we have in front of us this evening were crafted by the Energy Task Force back in 2019. The energy siting policies are used by the Public Utility Commission to decide whether an application meets the orderly development criteria that is part of section 248. That's the state regulation for which the siting criteria is applied. Because Williston has received a positive determination of energy compliance in the past, you'll have to reapply it, but what that means is that the Public Utility Commission will take these siting policies as the land conservation measures that they use to determine whether the renewable energy generation facility meets the orderly development criteria. Because you have a enhanced energy plan, that means the siting policies statements will be given greater weight, or what in legalese is called substantial deference. If you didn't have an enhanced energy plan, it would just be considered due consideration. They would take it into consideration, but it wouldn't have as greater standing as enhanced energy plan has. The siting policies that you have in front of you already meet the energy planning standards. This time around, we need to make sure that they're still meeting the energy planning standards and identify if the municipality has done any planning either in the zoning regulation or intends to do any planning in the town plan to change how the local known or possible constraints are treated. So a known constraint is the most restrictive, most prohibition for development. No development may happen on an area where there is a presence of a natural resource constraint. So that's a known constraint. A possible constraint that is less restrictive. There's a little bit of wiggle room in terms of where the project can be sited. If the project should be cited so that impacts to a natural resource that's considered a possible constraint should be minimized. And so the process here is to affirm that the local known constraints are still in alignment with the municipality's planning, same with the possible constraints. So if the municipality did any strengthening of zoning regulations that potentially changed a local possible constraint to a known constraint, then that's a change that we would need to make. It looks like there's the potential for the wildlife habitat areas to either be added or elevated to a known constraint, and then making sure that the policy statement that refers to the constraint is updated as well. And then also, this is probably happening in parallel, whatever the natural resource of the town plan says about these constraints, we need to make sure that we have internal consistency between chapters in the plan and that everything aligns. And then we also need to make sure that the mention about preferred sites, I think it was up above a little bit, is it legislative? No, I guess it's the statute that oversees net metering includes the preferred site, and so we just need to make sure that the preferred site discussion here aligns with the new net metering rule that was recently adopted. The maps that you have in your packet also seek to identify where these natural resource constraints are, kind of as a way to red flag where applications should go and where they should not go. And the CCRPC uses the citing policies when we write letters of support for section 248, and we will look at the enhanced energy plan to identify whether there is like a resource that needs to be red flagged where the potential applicant could be encroaching on. So I guess I'll find out, Darren, is there anything that I missed? Anything that you would like to add? Darren oversees our section 248 process and is the one writing the letters and doing the review. So I'm gonna kick it over to him.
Yeah, I think you covered that pretty well, Melanie. The only thing I'll add in terms of updating the Williston Enhanced Energy Plan, also actually real quick, hello everyone. I don't think I've been to your meeting before, so good to meet you all. Darren Schibler, CCRPC Senior Planner. The only thing that needs to be updated in the plan is the list of state known and possible constraints, because those did change a little bit with the updated guidance.
Yeah, it wasn't a big change, but yeah.
Yeah.
The vernal pools, confirmed vernal pools are known constraint, unconfirmed vernal pools are a possible constraint, and then there's a riparian area from the Vermont Conservation Design that was added as a possible constraint. And I'll be double checking when Melinda sends me the draft to make sure that everything matches up. And then also I just wanted to flag one of the maps that we sent had a wrong title. The map with water buffers should be actually a local known constraint. Yes. So I think it's this one. Yeah. This one should be local known constraint.
What's the yellow?
Okay. Oh, primary view shed, and then the gray is watershed protection buffer. And then slopes 30% or greater. I didn't realize that primary view shed was on there as a known constraint.
And I don't know if that's valid. I think it's gonna be too
Yeah.
Well, we need a map with all of these overlaid on top of each other.
Same thing.
Yeah, I mean, we need a page 8 for this.
It looks like you're right, Melinda. Well, we might have had this wrong in the maps, that in your plan and in our ecos plan where we relist the local constraints, you have primary view shed as a possible. So Melanie and I were going back and forth about this. I was not sure if your view sheds were known or possible, but now I'm looking at this and they are possible. Thanks for catching that.
Yeah.
But yes,
Yeah.
one of
so
those maps should be known, one of them should be possible, and we'll make sure that the data for each one is in the right map.
Okay. Yeah, that was my bad. Thank you for catching that.
Right, but do we really have the right to do that? I mean,
Yeah.
are we allowed development? Okay. Are we allow development and allow those view sheds? The houses can block the view, but we're not gonna allow solar? I mean, I don't.
I'm looking back at your old or the plan that is currently in effect.
Yeah.
And so view sheds outside the growth center are a possible constraint. So the map that we have in the packet is wrong. View sheds are a possible constraint, which makes sense because I think that the language is, it's a little squishy. It's not really clear cut that that would be an absolute prohibition for all types of development. So that's why it's a possible.
Right, so because when you're changing the word possible to no, that's like,
But
I
it's,
don't agree with that.
but it's not, they're
Yeah,
not, it
it
was a
is, yes.
mistake.
Okay, it's a
Yeah.
mistake, good,
There's a river, isn't,
okay.
I see a typo there, the River Cove Road.
yeah, there's some typos in
Okay,
there for sure.
This is from the original plan,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So, another thing that, that you might do is kind of go revisit this list and decide whether these view sheds that are listed are, still important, so, I don't know, that's just one other thing, but we don't necessarily have to do this right here and now, but.
Yeah, and
It's
just
developed on Mountain View and
Yeah.
Old Stage, so we're gonna allow a big development, but not solar.
Well,
so-
actually, that, you're talking about Glazer, right?
Yeah,
So they actually did protect, the 15-acre view shed, and not the entire one, but part of that specific plan was protecting that 15 acres that, is next to Mountain View Road.
The plan only shows about a 50-foot strip on either side of Mountain View, and the whole Glazer property was in the view shed.
The property includes,
Yeah,
conserved land? Oh, no,
Yeah.
that's what the right word for it is.
well, not exactly conserved, but it's gonna be owned by the town and effectively conserved, and that, view shed will be, effectively conserved through policies in the town plan and the official map. And I see that Darren's got his hand raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a quick point about, reviewing this list. It's fine, I think, if you want to look at it and evaluate whether it needs to change, but just keep in mind, as Melinda said, that that's baked into the town plan, the main document, and it's based on a land use policy there. And I'm guessing that other parts of Williston's, other committees or other folks had input on that. So just keep that in mind, that it's bigger than the energy committee and bigger than the energy plan.
Yeah.
So I'll raise my hand. So Melanie, because I was on the task force in the last time. I don't think many of us in the task force wrote most of this. Were you the author of it?
So I was the author of it, went to many energy task force meetings,
Right.
and then at some point, somebody else maybe
I think it was
took
Eric
and
Wells.
did other things. But
Yeah.
when when my work with you guys ended in 2019, this view shed list was in there, and it was taken from another part of the town plan. So,
Right.
we need to make sure that we have internal consistency, because there could be a situation where something is proposed in the view shed, and if it's not clear in the town plan and there's a lot of ambiguity, the PUC will not, they'll throw it out.
Yeah.
It won't be implemented.
And it needs to
Okay.
be based on some sort of information or data or study that the town did, something to say, here's why we chose certain places over others, some rationale for that.
Yeah, I think there was a view shed assessment that we
Right,
took this
yeah.
from.
There is a very old assessment
Yes.
from 1989, which I think one of the goals of the town plan this year will be to update that view shed assessment, so. Have
Do we then
to update it.
reference that rather than list? I see your hand shaking. I'll be right there just a second.
You could-
You could do that, because I believe the intention is this is going to be part of the town plan. And so you could reference the section. As so long as it's clear and the reader doesn't have to work to find the information, I think that could work.
And that would allow you to have parity with the rest of the plan. And once that, you update the scenic view shed analysis, you update the town plan, and then the list is there, or the map is there, and then this energy section simply refers to that whenever it's changed.
Because that might be
Yeah,
more effective for us rather than our trying to say, oh, are these 15 items, I'm guessing 15, are they the right ones?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
Right, but you know, again, what kind of we're banning solar in these places, I think that's
yeah,
not.
but that's not,
So we have to be very,
now
why,
it's happening.
Yeah,
what are
right.
we doing to do that?
so,
I mean, even if you say possible, it could, you know,
It's possible.
give opposition an easy stop
In,
on it.
in my view, and correct me, Melanie or Darren, if I'm wrong, but I think possible constraint. That most likely would mean, just some mitigation, like some screening, and not that the project would not move forward, but. But it would just, require some mitigation. Is that?
Yeah, so
sound-
screening could be achieved, or maybe the panel or the project is sited in such a way that it doesn't disrupt that view shed. So so anything that's listed as a possible constraint is not an automatic prohibition.
okay, Chapin, go ahead.
Yes, as someone from the planning commission of the time that we worked the draft energy plan into the one that was submitted to the select board, there was a lot of discussion of this, and we did decide it was okay to have them as possible limitations for the reasons that Melanie just said. And that list is extremely out of date. I didn't know it was as old as 1989, as Melinda just said, but I knew that it's at least 15 or 20 years old and is not currently accepted. So if you can refer to vistas from the current town plan, there will be a new current town plan in a year, and that list will be updated. So I hope that would be helpful. I also wanted to say, at the time we were working on that, we wanted to say you couldn't put a solar farm, cut down a forest to put in a solar farm. And we were told, I think by you, Melanie, that we couldn't do that because under law, we couldn't tell people they couldn't cut down their trees. But anything we can do to influence people to not cut down trees in order to put in solar, we thought was helpful. And while I had the floor, I wanted to add just one other thing, which is the preferred sites, which is a really good list. The places that are already impervious surface, already developed, or brownfields. That list is very important, and that's where we want to encourage. That's where I think all of us think we really want to encourage solar, as opposed to in fields. And finally, one other point which comes somewhere else in the plan, which is when there is ground-mounted solar, not to interfere with wildlife, and so fencing becomes an issue. And if it can be done in a way that it doesn't need fencing, or that the fencing can be permeable for wildlife movement, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Good question. Is there any, doesn't look like there is, now that I'm looking again, but is there any situation in which preferred and constraints conflict?
There may be sites, where, like, for example, I'm just trying to think, there's previously, well, I don't know, probably wouldn't be very many cases. There might be like a place where there's a gravel pit, and then there's like, some of it is in in a significant wildlife area or something, but or something else, or on a very steep slope or
Yeah,
something else.
and one more question. Anything that's preferred here. So I'm looking at previously developed land, so the schools. Would the schools be a preferred site? And then what, and maybe I'm just totally
The
misremembering.
schools themselves or
The schools themselves,
property?
well, either way, the buildings,
Well,
are-
it says pre-existing building,
yeah, so the schools should fall under that.
yeah.
So this is the map of the preferred site, so it does include like rooftop solar and parking lots and.
So I remember hearing,
It does or doesn't?
Does.
It does, yeah.
I remember hearing that one of our neighboring towns, I wanna say it was Winooski, I'm not sure, was limited to how much they could put on the school when they built a solar array. And I was wondering how that relates to this, because the maximum I saw was 500 kilowatts. Does anyone remember which school it was that tapped out like the maximum they were allowed to have, or is that a different PUC thing that has nothing to do with siting?
That might
Do
be a
you
net
want-
metering rule for the threshold that they're allowed to go up to for net metering specifically.
And that was in on that first page there, that was addressed. It said the change was from 150 to 500. Is that a recent change, or that change has been around for a while? The limit was 500.
Don't know the answer to that.
Okay,
Net metering.
We can find out.
Seats can be larger up to 500 kilowatts instead of 150 kilowatts.
and is that a site or a owner limit? Like, well, I'm thinking of the town owns a lot of sites. Are we constrained by a cap regardless of whether it's preferred, or is that? Well, I don't wait out.
That's a good question.
I think that was, each department can have its own application.
Well, then like,
500 kilowatts for each
so
department,
it's per site.
for each department, so each group. So town can break it down and have it sold under each department. That was my understanding.
We can clarify that. What either myself or Darren has to read the net metering rule to see if it's owner or site. I think it's owner, but it may have changed with the recent update to the rule. But we'll
It was-
clarify that.
That might make sense, because that, one of the neighboring towns, South Burlington and Winooski, hit their,
A limit.
a limit,
Mhm.
and I wanna say it was across multiple sites, but that would be interesting to know, because as we're looking at preferred sites. If the town's gonna be limited to 500 kilowatt, no matter where we put it,
When we've got schools count as the
Schools, yeah.
schools.
schools will be there,
not the
yeah,
town.
yeah.
They're not the town, no.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Schools representative.
but yeah, we don't wanna be limited.
Right,
Not when you're talking about rooftop solar,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's like millennials.
Yeah, so we'll clarify that. And then I also want to respond to Chapin's comment about minimizing forest clearing and how we can deal with that. So I think last time around the habitat blocks, the forest blocks, they're a possible constraint because they're a state possible constraint. And my memory is telling me that we were not able to elevate them to a known constraint because of CCRPC's test for our definition of a possible constraint. And so we typically rely on the zoning regulation. So if your zoning regulation for forest fragmentation or minimizing forest fragmentation, if it's not that strong and it doesn't allow for like 100% prohibition, then it needs to remain as a possible constraint. And so that's a question that Melinda and I talked about earlier via email, like, has anything changed in the zoning regulation that would warrant something changing from a possible constraint to a known constraint? If there hasn't been that change, then we do need to maintain forest as a possible constraint unless there's some strong proposed town plan language
I
that
think
would be a known constraint.
that may be the case with the significant wildlife habitat blocks, the tier 1. So just to fill people in, a few years ago, the Conservation Commission worked with the Department of Fish and Wildlife to refine the town's significant wildlife habitat area, because it wasn't specific enough. And there was the thought that, if you're just gonna cover the whole town in green, it doesn't really mean anything. You have to be more specific about the levels of protection. And so the Department of Fish and Wildlife helped us develop a 3-tiered system of wildlife habitat, with tier 1 being the highest protection and where you wouldn't want to see any development. So that may very well end up as being language in the town plan, but I don't know yet. So that's why it's sort of a question mark about whether to include those tier one blocks as known constraints.
And one more comment on forest clearing, based on Chapin's suggestion. Within the net metering rules that were just adopted, there is another new provision that talks about forest clearing, and I can't remember the details, but it basically sets a threshold for how much tree clearing can happen for something to still qualify as net metering. That doesn't necessarily apply to projects that are not net metered, but those also go through a different process with the PUC that's a little more like Act 250. It's the Section 248 review process, which still has ability for A&R to comment on the amount of forest clearing and the amount of disturbance. So that is now, I think, a little more addressed at a state level than it was the last time you looked at this plan. So that's just something else to consider. And then I believe I just looked at the net metering rules based on a quick read, and I'll try to confirm this with folks who know more, but it looks like the 500 kilowatt limit is for net metering overall, and it does take into account both the site and the ownership of that site and how it's basically like one installation at a time. So theoretically, you could put in panels on a roof of a school, and then maybe if years down the line, you subdivide off a parcel of that or add a parcel, and then you add something to that, add ground mounted to that. Maybe those would be considered different, but I don't know the full details. That's my guess, though.
So to clarify, the town could have overall in the, in the entire town on different parcels, more than 500 kilowatts of net metered solar.
Right. So you could have 500 kilowatts on top of the schools. You could have 500 on top of the town office, 500 outside on a ground mounted system. Those are all separate plants, separate
Okay.
net metering projects.
All right.
Right. Well, that's to our advantage.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, there is gonna be some clearing of trees and, encroachment on forests. As they're all Mountain View Road, to get more solar there, they did cut up over the hill, as you're going up over the hill there. So it's inevitable, there's gonna be some. But yeah, I mean, doing clear cutting in a forest maybe,
Right.
it's a different story.
So it's three acres of clearing is the threshold, and there's some details about how they define a forest and what qualifies, but that's the general idea is if you're clearing more than 3 acres, that's significant forest clearing and it doesn't qualify for net metering.
The town we haven't defined, are there any town defined preferred sites?
Town defined preferred sites.
The
You
landfill,
scroll up a little bit, it said the towns can, but it doesn't look like we
Right.
have in the past.
I think that
Yeah, the next paragraph down says town designated, but then there's no list below it, so it doesn't look like we have as a town designated any.
I think, I feel like I had a conversation about this, maybe it was with you, Melanie, or an email exchange where I was kind of looking at the way Colchester does this with designated sites, and it's not like you come up with a list beforehand, but if there's a proposal, then you go through a process can you like try to clarify that a little bit?
Yeah, so they did a scorecard, or like a scoring criteria, and they did that as a workaround to avoid writing, I guess, a letter of support to get the preferred site status for a particular application, and it didn't land well. It was not received well, so I don't encourage you guys to do that. Because the letter of support, I believe, is still needed, a joint letter from the town and from the region. And essentially the siting policies that you guys already have in your town plan are essentially the policies by which you would use to say whether a site is preferred or not. So if somebody came in the door and said, we have this project idea, we want to be eligible for the net metering benefit that comes with being a preferred site, will the town write a letter of support? And you can say, yes, we'll consider your request, and the transparent, policy making are these citing policies, that this is the tool by which the town would use to determine whether the project meets the criteria to become the preferred site. And I believe there's a statement in here that says
It's right here.
these policy statements are going to be the way we determine requests for a letter of support.
Mhm. Yeah,
So it seems like the process that we have laid out here for you guys is very similar to how we've done it in other municipalities, and that seemed to be well received. Act 174 enhanced energy planning is pretty new, but also it's been around long enough to be tested, and there's not any case law about enhanced energy plans, which is good, because to me that means that maybe it's working.
uh-huh. Yeah,
That's a question.
Yes.
How did we come up with ground mounted systems up to 15 kilowatts and rooftop solar up to 500 kilowatts, when it seems like it's exactly the reverse, which would probably happen if you're gonna have a community solar project of any size at all? So you're talking about piecemeal ground when the solar farm is a large
I
project.
see your point.
That's the
that's the
state.
PUC rule. That's not the
That's a
town.
PUC.
And has that changed? Yeah, 'cause, I mean, that's one of the main complaints,
For the PUC. Yeah,
and why the PUC's plan was gonna be updated, right?
But consider that 15 kilowatts is probably 3 trackers.
It is 3 trackers.
3 trackers, right? So like the
Nothing.
impact of, like, I've got 15 kilowatts on my roof and nobody knows. But if I had 3 trackers in the backyard, that would be pretty substantial to my neighbors. I would
think-
guess.
I think the PUC is also trying to encourage rooftop over ground mounted, because it's a little bit more of the preferred sites approach. Put the solar on existing developed areas as opposed to greenfield. So that's my guess for their rationale, and they have been pretty reticent to change those standards too much. And that's also defined in the net metering rules specifically. So it follows a slightly different process of how they come up with them. But yeah, that's our understanding.
Mhm.
so that's what's really holding up solar development in Vermont, those to be switched like that. There's no encouragement to have solar in Vermont, because it's all piecemeal, so.
Well, but don't just read the first, it says ground mounted systems up to 15 kilowatts and rooftop solar up to 500 kilowatts go through a registration process rather than a full PUC process.
Yeah, the 15 is fast tracked. It's super
Yes.
easy. Over that, you
Yes.
can do it, but it's.
So this doesn't
process.
prohibit somebody from doing a large scale ground mounted system, but they have to go through the PUC.
Yeah, it's just, it's a, super smooth process.
Notoriously rejects them.
But if this is state law,
Yeah.
then this is what we have to put in,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah. Mhm.
So, because when I printed mine out, it, of course, took all the edits out of it. So this has all the new edits. in it.
I didn't really touch this
Oh.
at all.
Can I make one comment about what you just said? Wouldn't it be better for us to follow state law? So that in case state law changes, we could follow it to get more ground mounted solar.
Right. I mean, I was just wondering if this whole section should just refer to what the current state laws and regulations are. Because if they're in the process of evolving and our plan is a static document,
Right.
does it make sense to refer back to what the state
So we-
policy is?
we've talked about this in the past, and Eric, I think that was the approach that we took to say, follow the state law. Melinda, could we do something like the first sentence or the first few sentences are, we will follow whatever current guidance is, and then, but also say, as of 2024, the guidance is X, right? Just, I feel like people looking at this should be able to have some idea of what it is today, or at least what it was when we adopted it, but there should also be language that doesn't limit us to this if the state moves forward.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah,
That's what we did last week, or
Yeah.
last meeting, yeah. So to the
we do that.
most current.
Nope. Chapin,
I wanted to say two things. One is it's really nice to hear this discussion, and the brain trust of Melanie and Darren and Melinda is very valuable, and thank you. I feel good about that. We will do the best we can, and you understand our goals as a town. And the other thing, just to clarify about the ground mounted, the reason that the small amount of ground mounted can be fast tracked, I think has to do with the fact that it involves new structures in the ground, whereas roof mounted does not. And so to me, it makes a whole lot of sense that you should go through the full PUC process if you're doing a large ground mounted installation. Thanks.
so, feel ready to move on to citing policies?
Sure.
I have not made any edits to this section. These, last fall, you reviewed a couple solar projects, using these citing policies. I don't know, my personal opinion is I think they're pretty good, but
Or any of the ones, what was the outcome of those reviews?
what was the outcome? We don't know yet. They're gonna be going through the PUC process and.
What was the town?
The IBM ones. one of
Right.
them.
The global boundaries,
The global
where they came
boundaries.
and met with us.
I mean, basically, we wrote a letter, CCRPC wrote a letter,
In support.
and, yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess what I meant to say was, our existing policies haven't prevented us from supporting any projects.
I mean, not yet.
Okay,
I mean, these ones, there were some comments, about certain aspects, some recommendations, but it was really overall pretty supportive. Of that. So anyway, I can kind of go scroll down this list if you want to just look at these. Yeah, so the second one is just, again, not an overall prohibition in projects that are in view sheds, but just measures to preserve the view shed, citing equipment, which keeps the project from being the dominant feature. Following state setback requirements, using the natural topography to break up the mass of the project. And then, citing so that you are avoiding habitat fragmentation and impacts that would demonstrably reduce the ecological function on a parcel in conservation areas, wildlife travel corridors, wildlife forward habitat. And then this watershed protection buffers is a known constraint. And then that's pretty clear, they shall remain undeveloped with the exception of.
That doesn't mean-
consolidated and utility infrastructure.
That doesn't mean like a flood plain, right, like
No,
okay, so it's just a watershed buffer.
yeah,
So
which is,
150 feet or something like that.
it's 150 feet from the four named streams, including
Yep.
Allen Brook, Sucker Brook, Winooski River, and Muddy Brook.
Okay.
And then 50 feet from all other mapped streams. 50 feet from wetlands. And then. Right, and then just, number 5, locate energy generation proximate to existing distribution and transmission infrastructure with adequate capacity near areas with high electric load. And then locating small distributed wind energy systems consisting of single turbine producing up to 100 kilowatt outside the designated village center or designated growth center. Then consistent with setback and noise rules. And then the intention to maintain the historic character.
Well, I didn't understand that. I feel I'm reading that such that the first sentence and the last sentence conflict.
Small, yeah, actually, somebody made an edit.
Because it says, don't put them in the growth
Yeah.
center or historic village, and then in the last sentence says, allowing them elsewhere in the designated village. The first sentence.
Outside the designated village center or designated growth center. While allowing wind, ground mounted solar elsewhere in the designated village center. Yeah, you're right, doesn't really make sense. Locate.
Well, town hall isn't in the
Up
growth
to
center.
In the designated village.
Wind turbine?
Well, Alan wrote the rules. Alan wrote the
Ground
school.
mount, oh, wind or ground mounted.
Yeah, well, it says, in the first sentence, it says, locate them outside.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And the last sentence says, allow them to be elsewhere in, which is the opposite of that.
Yeah,
Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's that
feel like-
sentence intent. The intent is to maintain the historic character. So I think the idea is that you wouldn't want to have your ground mounted solar in front of the armory, but it would be okay to have it out by the school.
Right, but I agree that that's the intent of the last sentence. I feel like that means there's something missing in the first sentence. Some kind of, because the last sentence implies we can have it on the school or behind the town hall, but those are both in.
Melanie, do you have any insight on that, or do you remember, do you recall this at all, or?
A little bit, because we have very similar type policies in the ecos plan, which, you know, set a lot of the framework for the
Yeah.
policy statements. So I think that the intention is to prioritize the village center and the growth center for homes and businesses to create more of a walkable community and not have renewable energy generation like take up that land because it's better suited elsewhere. And I see like it says the designed village center, it should say the designated village center. But also at the same time wanted to balance the need for small systems within the designated growth center. So like somebody could have one turbine or one solar panel, you know, to allow for like net metering, but that if there was a vacant parcel in the middle of the village center, it should not be filled with solar panels. Was because a better use is you know, there's homes and businesses are a better use in that area than renewable energy generation. So that was the intent we were going for.
Right, but as you have here behind town hall, it's still in the village, but it's not on Route 2, it's not.
Oh, okay. I think you're confusing, the designated village center doesn't include parcels that are off of Route 2. So it is consistent.
Okay, so this is not the same definition of village that we use for zoning.
No, it's the designated village center, which are parcels fronting. Or only parcels that front Route 2, that's
So
why.
central school and behind
That
town
would be
hall
out of
are
the-
outside.
Yeah.
Okay, so then maybe the last sentence doesn't mean designated village center, maybe it just means village.
No, it does. Maintain the historic character for properties with frontage on Wilson Road. Those are in the designated center.
Right, but then
While
it's,
allowing, elsewhere in the designated village. Oh, I see. While allowing, yeah, okay, that's where it's gonna be. Other, mounted solar,
Adjacent to the, you could say.
elsewhere in the village.
else in the village,
In the
that would make
village.
sense.
Right.
That's why it's confusing.
Okay.
Okay, good. I understood that.
Big catch.
And designated village center is capitalized down there, but not.
Yeah, I'll touch that, don't worry about it.
Just, I don't think we're gonna see any wind turbines go up around.
Yes, right here.
We can keep that in there, but it's not.
They had one out, ABS has one.
Did, it's a tracker now.
Died.
Yeah,
I was gonna ask, does anyone know, was that an intentional decision to go from wind to tracker because of like noise? or anything?
yeah, I installed the tracker.
Okay.
Yep.
Fell
Outside
apart.
of the story.
I realized that the existing one died, but I had to make the decision to go to solar, you know, with the.
It was an earth turbine, I think, and All Earth is the same company that used to do the wind turbines, so we just swapped them out with a solar tracker.
Okay, so it wasn't because they didn't want wind anymore, it's just they.
No, they're just not supported, those old turbines
Okay.
just didn't work out, They're too difficult to do maintenance on those, and they don't produce a lot of power.
Okay,
That's the thing with wind, you really need a big turbine for it to be worth anybody's
so for
time.
the same footprint, they get a lot more energy by going solar.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Wind scales up really nicely, big wind is really effective, but
Yeah.
small wind is not.
It was just a teaching tool anyway, so.
Yeah, I think it kind of
Really
was,
matter
yeah.
Which one it was.
so in the same, similar vein, it's, the ground mounted solar larger than 15 kilowatt AC. And wind turbines with a hub height larger than 30 meters. Outside the historic districts or the state, on the state or national register. And outside of the historic districts. So maybe
Is
that
it
would
supposed to be or
outside.
on?
Or and.
Maybe it should be outside of the designated village center, because that's the only place that has historic districts.
Yep,
Does that make
and
sense?
then, and to be consistent language, yeah.
Yeah.
To take out the word historic districts.
So designated village center is has a definition, that's a.
Yes.
It's basically,
Official
it's the
term.
historic district, yeah.
Okay.
And then I think we're getting close to the very end here. There's only, really
Mhm.
8 and 9.
Site transmission lines, those two.
Can you blow that up a little bit? This is where we gave the Global Foundries folks a little bit of a break, I think, didn't we? They didn't need to bury them or something.
Yeah,
Yes.
right.
You will find,
Yeah, so.
I know GMP, when I read, said they can't, and but they can't justify underground
Mhm.
for all those lines, yeah.
Over there or just in general?
In general, to replace the cost of replacing power poles and moving to underground is prohibited.
Is it really?
Yeah,
Like
That's funny.
3X or something, or what? are
I don't know.
we don't know.
GMP's proposal to the state last year involved a lot of underground.
Yeah.
But that may have been more like on roads with trees as opposed to.
Yeah, it's very
Yeah.
tactical. It's on like the frequent flyer outages that on these rural roads. They're very specific about where they're going to do it.
So this is aspirational, I made it,
Kind of,
because it's always too expensive
yeah.
on almost every project.
But I don't know if Belvin in Williston doesn't have underground.
What?
I don't know if Belvin doesn't have them underground. They're all underground.
Right,
Cat corners?
our bylaw, well, that's the Velco
That's-
line, that's,
No, okay, well,
From a residential bill.
Distribution versus transmission, the transmission lines are both ground.
isn't
Oh, well.
2A, just 2A there, aren't they just power lines on?
I believe so.
All right, the main downtown, was Maple Tree Place. They were told to do it and they said $2 million, we can't do it. So Maple Tree Place did not do it.
Well, how is it that every residential development has them underground?
Because we require it.
So it's not too expensive for residential, but it's too expensive for commercial? That seems
But
backwards.
this is in the eighties.
We require it for commercial as well.
Yeah, it was just in the eighties
Oh.
when that happened, Maple Tree Place, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's
So-
the new developments versus retrofitting, I think. is
Yeah,
the
this
difference
is
there.
just for going forward.
Yeah.
It's easier to do it from the get-go.
Yeah, we already got all the equipment there to dig it all up, yeah.
Okay,
And
good,
the,
so.
I mean, the bulk
Yeah.
of the bulk of the electric distribution in Task Corners is underground. You've got that big transmission line going through, but that's
Mhm.
probably where the $2 million came in, right? Just to underground that. Velco wouldn't want to do that. They didn't have to.
That was existing.
Yeah,
10 times that now.
Yeah.
and unfortunately, the Velco line is very constraining as far as like where development can go. So,
Around it, you mean?
yeah,
Because of.
you can't, you can't put anything under it or
Right.
within certain.
Planting,
distances.
yeah. Sure did.
Huh. What's the radius or the clearance, you know,
I don't know, I'm guessing 60 feet to.
either
the
side?
line?
In the right of way?
Yeah,
Just with the right of way.
right,
Yeah,
Right.
you can tell by what they trim, right? But it's like 80 feet. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, with parking lots under it, if you go through
right, parking lot,
Yeah.
it's about to.
Penny Crossing, you've got the developments.
Mm.
And then the parking lots all go onto the lines where they cut between the
Yeah.
apartments and the new hotel that's going up and all the other
Yeah.
things, yeah.
Around it.
Yeah.
Oh, is that a hotel by,
Yeah, that's,
Well,
yeah, that's,
no.
So.
That was.
well.
You
we
can
get to
also-
the bottom.
Mhm.
Go
You can
ahead.
also have, you can also have fields and gardening under the lines.
You want to.
If you want to, but if you look at, if you. So what they did when they went out through Catamount Forest, because we had so many invasives. They basically did invasive wipeout to protect not only. To get rid of invasives, but also some of the invasives we get so tall they get up into the wires. And so you don't want to garden underneath those now because of what's been put down. So,
Pesticide.
yeah,
or
herbicides, yeah.
Yeah, but that's in a forest situation. They're not gonna do that in Maple Tree Place.
No, they do tar.
Okay, then one thing we could add is 10 is kind of like what the petition is, do we mandate renewable for new projects?
We
And I
can't,
guess that's, we've talked about that before, we can't do it.
Okay, yeah.
But can't we put that in as part of our goals?
so let's, these are citing policies, so.
Yes,
Okay.
Okay, well, we can lead into the next.
yes, so do we have any other last comments on citing policies? From anybody on the phone or here? And congratulations, we made it to the end of the plan.
Wow.
Mostly, we've got one more. Is it my understanding, Melanie, that, you and Darren are gonna, be updating the community profile piece?
Yes,
Mhm.
that's correct. Hope to get you something for your meeting in June. But it may not. But that's the plan. I will keep you posted.
All right,
Those are all the charts.
yeah, at the beginning.
Yeah,
Yeah, so a lot of that
Probably.
was written by the task force, Brian, you remember the 8 of us at the very beginning and the first part and the charts that came in and we pulled those from various sources.
Yeah,
And I don't know how valid they still are, but It
Right.
might need to be all that
I
language,
thought
which is
I thought Melanie did most of that.
introduction needs to be reviewed.
Yeah,
Yeah, the introduction does need to be reviewed, but it's the tables that talk about existing electricity usage, natural gas usage, and then what are the projections for the milestone years for installing heat pumps, adopting electric vehicles, using more renewable energy. So it's all the data and targets that are needed for meeting the energy planning standards. So this is some of it. All the data tables. We have updated data for you guys to use as dictated by the Public Service Department. You have to use our data or do a similar data analysis. So we're working through the municipalization of that data, and the hope is to provide it to you in the next few weeks.
So
Okay, thank you.
will we be able to show like, I know like kind of the things have changed a little bit in terms of what the goals are, but will we be able to show like progress based on the last plan and what we need to do based on this plan, or because we couldn't really do that the last time around because it was a brand new thing, right? But now that it's
We have a progress section, didn't you, Melinda, draft something in here?
I did, and there are some measures that we can use to show progress. Some measures are not available. Hopefully we will be getting, some from the data that Melanie provides. And then there's also just sort of more let's see, it's further on, implementation. So there's some progress, but this is not like, most of this is not like sort of figures. There's like one at the beginning, EV adoption. But there's just stuff that the Energy Committee has been doing, kind of thing. So like yes and no, yes, where it's possible to get those figures. And it may not be possible for every goal that we have. That makes sense.
okay.
So,
Okay. We're not quite there, but making
you're not quite.
great progress.
Oops.
I haven't looked at it in a long time, but does the EAN dashboard, is that still around and is it updated?
There's a new dashboard, Chapin. It has many fewer measures. There's like 4 different areas. But it has been updated through 2022, I believe. So I think one of them is heat pumps installed, or households where heat pumps have been installed, EVs registered, homes weatherized, that kind of thing. So yeah, we will plug that into here.
Is it broken down by towns?
It is, yep. So. Okay.
Apologies, my computer died and I lost you guys. So if there was a question for me and I missed it, I'm so sorry.
No worries.
All right.
I wonder, is the EV charging station installed and up and?
It's not up, it's installed, it's being installed, it's not running yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the remaining, is it?
You just need to commission it and get it up and running.
Oh, and that GMP one, you know what it is? It was the EV Go one at Hannaford's. And they changed the software on it. So before I was getting free charging from EV Go. And now they changed the software, I can't get free charging. Just to change the software, it's still owned by EV Go and GMP shared, but. They found a way to cheat.
All right. We are going on to a petition that was offered up on clean energy standards for the town. And so the folks from CCRPC,
No,
No, you don't need to stay.
I mean, you can if you
You
want. to.
can, but you've been tremendous help, but I don't think this one directly affects you. Chapin the same, or anybody else, unless Chapin, you want to stay and listen. So we will
Yeah.
excuse Darian and Melanie and thank you both.
Unless you want to, feel free to stay if you want.
We will probably be here for hours and hours and hours.
I'm gonna head. I've had a very long day. But if you have questions, let us know. We're here to support you and be a resource about. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, same as Melanie, we've both had all day meetings, different ones. So we're gonna head out. But I do want to say for this next agenda item, we did pass this on to our energy planner, Ann Janda. She's been in touch with City of South Burlington, who is doing some similar work on clean heat standard, but also to be aware of it, of what's happening at the state level. So if questions come up while we're not here, feel free to reach out and we can try to help you out with that.
great, thank you.
Okay, thank you both, Darren and Melanie.
Thanks.
Thanks for having
Thank
us.
you.
Yeah,
Thanks.
thank you.
Chapin, you have your hand raised?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify one thing, because I saw on the agenda, it sounded like the planning commission was pushing this off to you. And I'm the one that made the motion at the planning commission. And it was more that we didn't want to bypass the energy committee. We wanted to refer it to the energy committee to evaluate and comment on, especially through the lens of, does this local clean heat standard idea, is it consistent with the existing town plan? So it's something that you would support in principle. And so what needs to be talked about is how to do it rather than whether it's a good idea. But basically, we, the planning commission, thought that the energy committee should be part of the loop in all of this. And so that's where I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
It might also maybe be useful, so we discussed this at planning commission. I think you were on vacation, Matt was there,
Yeah.
and I think we discussed this for like a solid hour. It was a long time. The summary for the energy, so I was there that night. The summary for the energy committee is basically, if you read this is the ask, right? And what we kind of get down to, and I'll probably flub the language a bit. The two pathways to get there are bylaws, which I think are essentially related to zoning. And the second one is ordinance. Matt's perspective was that ordinance is challenging because of enforcement. It would require something we don't have, which is a building inspector, right, to actually enforce the ordinance. I think I asked the question, well, how did other towns do it? South Burlington has a building inspector, as does.
They don't.
No, it's
Was it
in here.
Burlington has the building
It's an
inspector.
honor system, or certification system.
South Burlington.
South Burlington, but
Okay,
Burlington has a chip.
Burlington has a building
Building
inspector.
department.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Matt also talked about requiring the developer to fund inspection by an engineer that was picked by the planning and zoning.
Yeah.
So that it could be an independent review.
So basically, it comes to us with a couple potential pathways to move forward, and I think the ask to us was to make a recommendation on one or both pathways, to move it forward.
But I actually heard something different, and what I heard was that Matt was recommending it go through an ordinance path. Because there's really, there's not really a nexus in our bylaw, to do this. And with an ordinance, with bylaw, you get into, more issues about vesting, and with an ordinance, it takes effect, and it's like, everybody's gotta follow it.
So only ordinance was the path.
Yeah,
Okay.
that was my understanding,
That was-
that was
Correct, yeah.
strongly recommended.
Okay.
But ordinance goes through the select board.
Every bylaw goes through the select board as well.
Okay.
It's just a.
So what is the difference,
And
please?
then,
And the generic term of bylaw versus
So,
ordinance?
a bylaw is, a land use regulation. and it gets enforced through the planning and zoning department. An ordinance is a regulation that is enforced, more sort of generically. It's not enforced through planning and zoning, but it's
Like noise.
enforced ultimately
is
by the
it
select
police?
board and police.
Yeah, Matt explained it
And,
as
and fees.
zoning. They can keep showing up and say, please fix this ordinance, you can get fined.
Right.
I think was the
exactly, yeah.
Right.
simple.
Right.
Yeah.
When you're proposing a project, that seems like finding is post-project. You know, instead of being proactive, you're reactive, and this needs to be proactive, because it's gotta be
Hmm.
submitted to planning and zoning as being complying with no combustible heating elements.
Well, that would be the case with an ordinance. We would still have a path through planning and zoning to enforce, but it would be through the issuance of the certificate of occupancy. So could say that planning and zoning will only issue certificates of occupancy if you certify that you put in that you followed this rule or whatever.
Right,
And South Burlington currently does that through a self-certification process.
Like you can't put heavy machinery in in a place where it's gonna affect residential, and that's because it violates the noise ordinance. No,
Well, can we require them to submit a plan showing their potential proposed heating systems before they're given a permit?
I mean,
It's like that's the proactive, you start up front rather than
yeah,
punishing them later on when it's effective.
I mean, we certainly make people aware of the requirements and
Yeah,
yeah.
but like anything else with the building codes, I mean, like you're not gonna issue that certificate of occupancy if it like isn't connected to town water or whatever other thing goes in there, right? So the builder should be aware. It's kind of on
So
the
Melanie,
builder.
what's an example of another ordinance that we could use to?
Well, Eric gives a good example of like the, something related to, connections and connection fees and stuff like that. So there's like rules around connecting to water and sewer. And those rules have to be followed, in order to get that connection.
And those are ordinances.
Yeah.
Okay.
So people thought it was
Yeah.
their freedom of expression, that it was.
Who's that?
That sounds true.
I wonder, can we, so the two pathways was, do we do it now and interrupt or in addition to the work we're doing on the plan?
Yes.
Or do we wait till the plan's over?
So
Well, where I wonder is if, could we piggyback off of South Burlington, meet with them really soon? Find out what they're doing, are they doing an ordinance, are they doing a plan, bylaw?
They
And
did
then,
an
and what are their bylaws, or what is their ordinance, and copy, I mean, not just copy verbatim, but take it and see if we can use it, and what we, modify it, and that could expedite it.
So,
Go ahead.
Can I
Now we
speak
did a
to that?
review.
Yeah.
so, we have looked into South Burlington and Burlington ordinances. I have them right here attached to this memo. They're, they seem like pretty good, well-written ordinances. There are some differences. I think we're the Energy Committee and Planning Commission in support of pursuing this. There's a number of decision points you have to make, is it gonna be more like Burlington's, is it gonna be more like South Burlington's? There's a lot of decision points. And the other thing is that, this is a big deal and, like other things that have been a big deal in town, it's taken a long time to get them. You would really have to have a fairly robust public process and, make people aware of it, because believe me, if you don't, and you try to get this done quickly and slip something into the select board, a bunch of people are gonna show up saying that they didn't have an opportunity to participate, and they're gonna stand up in opposition to it. And the select board will also expect that, you know, that a good public process be done, to, you know, while while you're doing this.
I think Matt also mentioned that South Burlington had probably through some advanced conversations, had strong support on the city council
Mhm,
leading into it.
right,
Right, I think that's one of the, not for the energy committee necessarily, but for concerned citizens to work on building some relationships with individual select board members that may be champions
Yeah.
of that.
So I have a question. About timing, so if, the energy committee, the energy town plan. Will be, finalized and, used by like what date?
well, so the plan as a whole needs to be adopted by August of 2025. The energy committee hopefully will be done with your drafting of the energy plan. In, I don't know, three more meetings,
Yes,
so end of June. Is, hopefully,
because there's a number of review processes
Right, but
beyond this, final edits, going up to the planning, and so. Understanding that the petition asks that it be done. But then looking at the background that Melinda has put in for, it, especially with public comment. We can't just say. The energy plan we put off for several months. While we try and do this.
But I think that, I think,
That would be
so one of the questions I asked the planning commission was. Let's say there's no ordinance. Let's say this petition doesn't exist, and let's say the new town plan, as we've worked on, goes into effect today. Like snap our fingers, if it was in effect today, would it change anything? It would not change anything for existing. Development, right?
mhm,
And it's questionable. If it would. I don't think there's anything in the town plan with the teeth to prevent. Natural gas or any fossil fuel heating moving forward.
No.
Right, we express a lot of would like to haves.
Mhm.
We've amended bylaws already. To increase the carrots,
Mhm.
right? But even if the new town plan goes into effect today with everything we've put into it, there's nothing in the town plan that. Leads to the next development not having fossil fuels.
That's correct.
Okay, so the only option. And again, if the zoning is off the table, the only option forward. Is ordinance. Related, which would not go in the town plan, right?
well, so what the town, yeah. I think that, the whole question about process is really related to, do you want to interrupt what you've been working on right now? Potentially for several months, to do this, or do you want to finish what you're doing and then. And then assuming that there's support, that's the other question. Is, does the majority of the committee support this, and want to move forward on it? I think that's the question, not so much. A town plan establishes the foundation to be able to. Do things like this, and as I stated in my memo, this current town plan already has language that supports, the current petition, or, could certainly, provide some support. So that's kind of what, they're two different things, and the ordinance is like a regulatory.
The conflict though is time and effort, not,
Yeah,
nothing beyond that.
yeah, right.
It's a question where we're spending our time as a committee.
Right, right.
Yeah.
so,
But we're also under a directive to get our town plan, its current, updated.
Right.
Yep. By a certain time. So they're
Well,
not
the second
finding
part.
ourselves here in. December or January of next year, still working on it while we're trying to do. The potential for a new ordinance and anything around that.
And there's also. Besides that, there's just the, taking time and attention away from one thing, which is the town plan, which is also a big deal. and sort of putting it towards this other thing in sort of in the middle. So that's.
Can I say something, please?
Yes.
I was the one who wrote the petition. And my understanding was that the town plan would cover, would have, like teeth in it about new large builds and what kind of heating, energy for heating.
Who were you told that by?
Well, I guess that's one of my questions.
Mm.
That's one of my questions, but
Actually, the town plan doesn't have any. It directs the bylaws and they have the teeth. Right, is that correct?
The town plan is a document that establishes overall policy, goals, objectives. And its intention is to guide, the future work of the town, whether it's programmatic work or regulatory, establishing regulations, or, budgetary work or anything like that, basically.
okay, so there wouldn't be anything in the town, there would potentially be anything in the town plan that we could point to, if a developer wants to put in natural gas in a new development, there wouldn't be anything in the town plan that we could say, it says in the town plan that you can't do that.
No, it doesn't work that way, no,
Okay, and that's not a possibility.
no,
So it's aspirational.
yeah.
So the
yeah.
question is whether this aspiration of this petition shouldn't be in the town plan, whether it should be in the town plan.
And the aspiration of the petition is already supported by the existing, that's what Melinda, I think, was saying earlier, that
Where is that?
So, right,
Where's
5.1, so this is language that's in the current energy plan. And 5.1 says review and adopt the Vermont Building Energy Stretch Code or other comparable standards for all development and renovations additions
Right,
in the environment development bylaw.
yeah.
But
And then
that's,
5.9, explore a requirement that all new development provide cold climate heat pumps or other devices using renewable energy sources as the primary source of building domestic.
There you go.
energy. So that is aspirational language, and what it says is the town will consider doing these things.
right, so this is in the current
Already
plan.
there.
Yeah.
This is actually what we already went through and reviewed.
Yeah.
So that's our intended language.
So we're done. We're done.
Well, basically, 5.9 supports us, so existing language in the plan without any updates. What exists on paper today supports the energy committee
Yeah.
proposing to, I guess, planning and then the select board to do what 5.9 says. Right, so we've got the support in the existing plan to do it. The plan is there's no teeth, doesn't
Okay.
say developers have to do it,
Okay.
but we already have the support we need to move forward. And by support, I mean, when we go to the select board, we can say, per energy plan that you adopted, I should do this.
okay, could we just change some wording in there?
No, just a second, no, because that's what we wrote. So we've already gone through this process. So Eric, please go ahead.
Okay, well, so, is 5.9 the stuff is that the new stuff or the old stuff?
That's the
the
old
new-
stuff.
I thought
Okay.
that's not the new.
No, this is the existing plan, the one that's currently in force.
Okay,
And I
well,
believe-
that's good.
I believe that the new one, though, does maybe say something very similar.
We removed.
Yeah, we
renewable
tweaked it somehow. Maybe I think we took out heat pump in specifically to like.
Yeah.
I think
you're right.
Yes.
Alternative.
Yeah.
This is not the new one.
No, this is the
No,
old one.
No,
this
This
is
is
this
today.
is the
Don't
plan.
mind that.
This today.
and we might have changed renewable energy sources to fossil free or fossil fuel free.
We edited it.
Something like that.
I
Can we
think
see that?
changed, we made it more, we made it more generic, but yet even, we didn't
Is
just
it
renewable.
non-combustible?
But I think that the point is that,
Maybe.
the point is, you're drafting a plan, what you're drafting is not yet in force. So
Right.
this is language from something that is a current document.
Yeah,
That's the point.
that's a good,
So, but what's the new one? What's the proposed one?
let's not, this'll cover. You know,
Yeah, this will cover it. So
let's-
my kind of follow-up question was, it kind of comes down to urgency, right? If we wanna, if we want to move forward with this and sort of table working on the town plan, I mean, the decision point is how urgent do we think we need to come up with, make a run at this? And I guess the two things that kind of inform that in my mind are, one, how many developments are in the pipe that would be affected by this? And two, like the state is plodding along with their clean heat standard, and that is going to eventually either fizzle out or turn into something that would either be less stringent than what we're contemplating or equally as stringent or something along those lines. So is it, depending on urgency, is it worth waiting to see what the state does? And is it worth trying to get our plan done? I guess those are the two urgency related matters.
I doubt the state's gonna do anything like what's in 5.9 there.
Right.
Right, so it would be the town would have to take the initiative to do it. And
Well, they have actually passed. That's what the clean heat standard is, right? Like it doesn't prohibit development, but it makes it financially difficult to do that kind of development.
Chapin's nodding, and raising his hand.
Sorry.
If it comes to pass, right?
The current clean heat standard is about studying things and making it equitable. It's not about implementation at the state level. If I could say a couple of things, the first is I hadn't read Melinda's memo until during this discussion, and the memo was excellent and it really lays things out well. I have just one suggested tweak to it, which is this: if we were to do an ordinance, it is not something that would happen quickly. And the select board and the town as a whole would need to be educated on it and understand what it's looking at. And so to me, it's not an either or. If you were to table the work on the town plan to work on this, it would then get something proposed that would then take a year or two probably to get through. So to me, I think both threads should be followed at the same time, which is if you think that what's in this petition is a good idea and consistent with the existing town plan, which includes the energy plan appendix, then sort of starting the process of talking with the town manager and the select board and sort of building understanding of this is important. We have a similar thing happening right now with the idea of a TIF district in Taft Corners to support the infrastructure that's needed in order to further what's in the form-based code. It's aspirational and it needs some backing. And so to me, it's the same idea. This is something that would take some gestation with the select board and with the town. And so my own feeling is if you as an energy committee want to propose moving it forward as a parallel step and then not spending all of your time on it because there's a lot of education time to be done. That's the way I see it, that there's not an either or, but I really think Melinda's memo lays out what's happening very well. Thank you.
I think that wraps it up. Chapin summarized pretty well. I agree with his methodology. Anyone else weigh in?
So I agree also. Yeah, I would say we should move forward with what's proposed in the petition with all due haste. As long as it does not delay our implementation of the updated town plan.
Here.
Now, what I don't know, and I shouldn't say this as a guy who tells people they can't tell me to do two things at work at the same time. But
Yeah.
what I don't know is the likelihood of being able to, I don't know how much we can get done in parallel. And I think that's a question maybe for.
So-
Maybe you agreed to look at upcoming meetings and see what you think we can get done.
I think that, where you move forward on this, the next step would be to draft a memo to the. Town manager and select board, outlining a general framework and. Get the town manager to get it on their agenda, and so getting it on their agenda. That may take, weeks, a couple months, who knows,
What would we be getting on the agenda?
The
Like,
memo-
what would
the
that
memo.
look like?
So that would mean Eric would take a memo from the energy committee to the select board. And you would probably show up or some of you would, to speak to the select board about this issue, and they would, discuss it and decide whether it's a priority or not. And, if they decide that they don't want a town committee spending time on this, and they don't want staff spending time on this, then it may end there. But if they decide, okay, go ahead, spend some time. But I really think that that's the first step, because otherwise you're gonna do a whole bunch of work, and then they won't even consider it because it's not a priority.
So does Sustainable Williston have a role in that and
Sure, you can show up,
going to the select board? And
sure.
Make public comment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I honestly,
Show support.
I guess speaking as a sustainable Williston member, I think it's important that the sustainable Williston, or any concerned citizen to do, is start building support with individual select board members. Like, I don't think. I think it would be helpful if the first time the select board members hear from the public on this, maybe isn't at. When they get the memo, but. Yeah, select board members are accessible, maybe they'd be willing to. Hear from concerned citizens.
Better do one-on-one rather than at a public select board meeting.
Yeah.
Well, so I've been given certain direction from the town manager, and he would like to follow this process.
Yeah.
So,
What she said.
Okay.
and
No under the table bribing or.
No bribing.
Ice cream cones or.
Agree with that.
So,
I'd like to just offer something, because I talked with Jack Hansen today, who was a city councilor in Burlington, and he wrote the ordinance for Burlington. And he told me that there's over 70 cities and towns across the US that have a similar ordinance. And there's a lot of them in Massachusetts. So I think even though the paragraph in the memo, you said no other municipality in Vermont besides Burlington and South Burlington, but others are talking about it like we are. So I think that
Essex too.
I think that's, I just wanted to add that.
so I would thank you. I would like to make a motion. That we,
Eric has something.
hi Eric, go ahead first.
Just so the memo would the memo we present to the select board would say, it would be more like a process thing, like, do you want us to work on this? This is what it might look like, rather than this is what we think it should be.
Well, it's in 5.9, it says explore a requirement. To adopt new, right? So that the letter says, we're going to explore, we'd like to explore this with, that's basically
As
it.
per is laid out in the plan, yeah.
Yeah, as laid out in the plan.
And you approved the plan, so you should let us explore it, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Melinda, is Eric trying to tell us something?
Is he trying to tell? He just wants to, follow a process that. How do I describe? He's pretty clear about what kind of process he wants to follow, and he's, also, he was telling me that the select board is developing a practice of basically establishing priorities for the work plan, and so, I think that this
Get
is
in line.
gonna
given
The
like,
energy committee work plan or their own?
for their own work plan
Mhm.
and what, you know, what their priorities are. So
Yeah.
this is gonna be part of, you know, that going into that decision making. So, you know, I mean,
This probably is in our work plan. If it's in here, it's in our work
No,
plan,
but not the select board.
not there, yes.
So by putting this in a memo to the select board and following that process, we explicitly get on their radar.
Mhm.
And
yeah,
maybe reserve some future cycles from them to consider. Is that the?
yeah, and I mean, I think it's really important to kind of take the temperature of the room so that you kind of know, you know, who supports it, who doesn't, what the questions are. You know, it's hard to kind of know what they're gonna say. But like, I don't think that it makes sense for this committee to do like months and months of work without sort of, you know, the select boards.
Yeah.
Saying.
Go to tribal,
Yeah, right, makes sense.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Read, you had a motion.
So I was going to just propose a motion for vote by our committee that we develop a memo addressed to the town manager and select board based on this petition we received from Sustainable Williston, asking if they have an interest in having the Energy Committee pursue this independent of the continued process on the energy plan.
yeah, and I wouldn't even really mention the energy plan, I would just say, you know,
Okay. And to see whether, as we have said, there's even an interest in having our committee do this or not, or it's not even on their radar. So I'd like that as a motion.
Could I make a? Amendment to the motion?
Yeah, yes,
Like, could we include in the motion, and I guess this is if we vote for it, right?
yeah,
But. Some statement that the energy committee, if we all agree, thinks this is important, thinks this is worth our time, like. I feel like the memo that we sent to them.
yes, because
Should I
we
just go, hey, should we do this? or
no,
should
no,
we-
no,
we
because
feel
we
it's
can
important?
cite 5.9 in
Yeah.
our current plan. To say this is in the current plan.
And it's important to us,
Right.
this is something we'd like to move forward with.
Right.
And we're asking your support.
Right. So in light of that rambling language by both of us, I'd like to make that motion. Do we have a second to,
I'll second that.
okay? So we have a motion and a second to start the process of speaking to or writing to the town manager and select board on the explicits of this petition and 5.9 in the current plan. And to see if there is an interest to have us explore the language that is in the petition. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
so 5 ayes, 1 nay.
1 nay.
Can I ask Jake a question?
Just a second. And we don't have any abstentions. So, then Maria is not with us. Okay, so at least we'll start a conversation through a letter. See if there's an interest. Okay, it is 8:17. We are late. We're probably not going to get to the rest of the agenda. Other than to say, I sent the links out from the window dressers training for how to do window measurements. So that will be, and they have another session. And we have our usual observer article for next month.
Do we have, does anyone here have a list or a set of links to previous articles? Are they all on the website?
Yes,
They're on the website.
yes,
From the first one that we did.
yeah,
Okay. Yeah, I want to go back and maybe consider updating one of the EV ones, but I want to reference the old one first.
Uh, Um, another thing, another article could be, well, actually. At some point, I mean, I'd like to do an article about, the town getting electric mowers and the EV charger, but, that could be. Cause they haven't gotten a mower yet. So.
Good. Okay,
Todd got his field line,
you did,
yeah,
through ARPA funding?
no, through the ECBG grant.
Oh, nice. And you get the mowers for the grant.
Yeah.
I have to run.
Yeah, I'm sorry, no,
Oh,
oh, please, yes, go ahead.
Sorry.
Thank you for staying so late.
Sure.
Okay, is there anything else to address? All right,
I have a question, if I may. So the memo to be written to give to Eric Wells and the select board, is that sort of like
It's-
what the language that you just said, is that what you're gonna,
we'll
are you gonna make
we'll
it?
have to draft that.
We'll make it,
And then next meeting, we'll look at it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not just gonna go this week. No, the committee has to review it and
Uh-huh.
adopt it and agree to it. It may take a couple of meetings before we get it all put together.
Uh-huh.
It is, yes,
Okay,
okay,
Can I ask you a question? About this?
yes.
Chapin, is the planning commission involved in this? Are they? We tossed it back to the energy committee, but are they going to enact a separate position on this?
The planning commission has voted to support having the energy committee look at this and start communication with the select board and Eric Wells. So the planning commission has basically said, yes, we would think that something should happen with this, and we need to involve the energy committee.
So that's something that could go in the letter. Your
So
support.
this is like a mother may I
Yeah,
talking to the select board. It doesn't mean it will ever happen. As Melinda said, they
Right.
could come back and say, yeah, you can do this in 2029. You know, or it's a great idea, it should be your
Yeah.
number one priority, but we don't know that. Until
if I-
it's,
yeah. And Reed, if I could make three real quick points. One is that we are if this, let me start another way. The new town plan cannot do what an ordinance would do. So this really, to me, is a parallel thread, not a change to the town plan work. The second part is that we would be doing a favor to future homeowners who are trying to convert to heat pumps that could have been installed much cheaper when the house was built, or additional insulation that would have been added if they're meeting the stretch code, et cetera. And similarly, developers, knowing that this is coming, might start using heat pumps more.
right,
And partly in answer to Eric's thing, this is the only way that we could affect current things like the Glacier Plan. The Glacier Plan sidestepped growth management, so all the carrots are gone. They could redo it using the new carrots, but this, that's going to be developed in a couple of years probably, and this might affect what the heating sources are of those homes.
and the engineering would probably be better than a retrofit or later. So,
all right.
so
With that,
I'll just say, I just came back from Arizona and I saw one solar panel installation in the whole state. I was all over the place. And I saw about 12 Teslas, no other EVs. It's just.
it's
In the sun, where the
It's
sun.
just like going down south.
55 days a year.
South Carolina.
But Norway,
It was for-
the opposite, right?
Yeah,
Hold
but
on.
Tucson's a home of Genesis electric cars.
It's-
You see them?
Oh, maybe I may have missed that one.
I was in Arizona.
Is the recording off?
Hey.
No,
No.
shoot, all right, I'll have to just,
That an art installation?
what I wanted to show you is when I was in Arizona in
Yeah.
Scottsdale a couple of weeks ago.
Oh,
I saw whole bunch of solar canopies over parking lots.
Yeah, schools had it.
Yeah.
I was
Lots and
thinking,
lots.
I was in the
Yeah.
old Scottsdale.
Oh.
Old Scottsdale.
Oh, it's so funny, like, I know somebody. else
Maybe
did.
you were in
I didn't see it.
You were in the designated village district.
Yeah.